I think Ugandans need to properly embrace Ugandan products. I think that we need to start there. We have a wealth of creative people, passionate producers that are actually doing a good job and improving on their quality.
Do you aspire for a booming middle-class economy? Listen along and understand what turns the wheels of Uganda's economy with our line of incredible influencers in their fields.
Welcome yet to another episode of the podcast segment on marketing. We're very excited because we have the one and only from Uganda Breweries Limited, Hilary Baguma, brand manager, Mainstream Spirits at Uganda Breweries. His brands are one of those that contribute to Uganda's economy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. As much as we are happy to have you here, we're also excited to hear about your journey. Normally for marketers, we ask you, how did you get into marketing? But for you, it's going to be special since you deal in mainstream spirits.
Yes.
If you were to summarize your branding strategy into a cocktail, what would it be?
Okay, that's a good question. So it will have a bit of insights, right? It will have a bit of creative flair. I think that would be the garnish.
Yum.
Yeah, because I tend to be inclined towards creativity. I feel like it's a powerful and underrated driving force for marketing excellence. Especially these days, I feel like before there was a higher propensity to creativity than there is now, because you need to communicate to consumers in a language that they understand. And communication is not one way, it's two way. Sometimes there's a bit of back and forth because the key currency for understanding consumers is actually understanding them. It's the key currency of communicating is understanding each other. So you need to understand consumers, and that includes understanding their behavior, their consumption habits, and you'll be even more able to project or forecast how they're going to behave. Data is very important, get insights from data, but that's all in the past. And marketing is very dynamic. If I ask you what was called 5 years ago, 3 years ago, do you remember?
Even last year, there's so many movements now. If you don't stick to what is true to you, your purpose, then you get lost with all the trends because it's fast changing.
Exactly. So that's what marketing is, and some of us forget that we're marketing for the future, right? Being in touch with your consumer helps you to be able to predict, anticipate future consumption habits. And also marketing, a big part of it is anticipate. If you had consulted these consumers, there's a chance that you would have probably made another Walkman or something like that. So why I'm mentioning that is because we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to anticipate consumer needs and give them solutions even before they feel like they need them. I feel like that's a very strong part of marketing. Being future facing for me, being creative, being dynamic, being innovative would be a part of that cocktail. And as I said, I need something that gives you a lot of attention, it gives your brand attention. I believe I'm old school marketer, so I believe in marketing, you're in your brand coming ahead of you, like you're in service of your brand. And there are times when being in service of your brand means also you presenting yourself in a certain way as a brand. An example is CEOs these days are so much at the forefront of marketing efforts than before. So back behind the scenes type of video content is now becoming a thing. A day in the life of a CEO, years back would never have been heard of.
They would never let them cross the boardroom.
Exactly. People in the factory on the line were hiding what they're doing from competition, but right now, because authenticity is a very powerful part of marketing, you see a lot more doors being opened to a lot more eyes, and
because people want to do business with people they trust. And the more we see leadership in these rooms, in these platforms, then it's more believable to interact with the brand.
And authenticity really builds. There's nothing that builds trust like authenticity, vulnerability, and that's what that human element kind of gives to to that type of brand connection.
Yeah.
That should be my cocktail.
I would call it delicious.
Nice.
In the sense that you love what you do, just like you said, as most people are in service with their brands, which I really appreciate, because we also saw on your LinkedIn as we prepared for this interview that you love what you do. You're over 15 years in service with different brands. Now that you say that, people are in service with their brands, it's really true to see. You've been nominated in several awards, which is amazing. Take us on a journey. How did you get into marketing?
How did I start marketing? Interesting question. I've never really thought about it, but I feel like marketing was actually made for me. Like, I feel like marketing found me and I didn't find it.
Yeah.
So what got me into marketing?
Yeah.
So what got me into marketing was I used to be really, really good. I think I still am. I'm really good at writing.
Yeah.
And to be a
literature student.
And to be a good writer, I think you need to have empathy, right? So I don't know which came before. I think empathy came before the writing. Yeah. So empathy, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, made me be able to see perspectives different.
Yeah.
And that was from way back. And I remember as way back as well, Form 6 VAC, I would listen to an advert on radio and be like, man, they could have just changed the words like this. If they could just have said this instead of saying that. And I had no idea what that was by then, yeah? So I did accounting and finance at undergrad. And then after that, I met a gentleman called Joseph Rabose, IQ Creative Media. And I think he picked up on the passion I had, advertising, for creativity, for abstract art and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that he really pointed me in the right direction, gave me literature that helped me to discover the world of advertising. Because I think I used to talk about advertising all the time.
Yeah.
I read about WPP, BBDO, which were some of the biggest agencies. Well, then read the story of Ogilvy, like a novel, end to end. It's further modern advertising.
Yeah.
And the stories would be so fascinating. Like, I would see how these guys find a problem, a brand that's in big time trouble.
Yes.
And then they brainstorm, and a few ideas later, they come up with something that's magical. You find the impact that brands have on life, on the social cultural construct. You find that maybe Christmas has changed because of Coca-Cola, and it's doing something for the brand, but also it's giving family some meaning, to come together, and it's becoming deeper than just in Uganda. Like, you see Uganda Breweries becoming the unofficial emblem of the country. So you see that brands actually stand for more than just what the product is, and the real meaning that they have to consumers really, for me, resonated so much. And I found that special. And the more that the more I read about advertising, the more I would learn that it's just a small little part of marketing. And my curiosity led me to digging away to get that knowledge a lot more. And so I ended up learning about what marketing really stands for, the marketing mix, the tactical mix, going deeper into what it means for the consumers, understanding that this connection, an emotional connection you have to have with the consumer through culture, is actually a deliberate effort. And it led me down a very interesting journey whereby I believe that I was self-taught for a very long time. YouTube, books, name it, I read it, I did it. Conversations with marketers that I felt like were good at the point. And the more I would learn, the more I would want to learn. I ended up doing a postgraduate diploma in marketing at UMI, and then ended up doing CIM, Chartered Institute of Marketing, all the way up to level 7.
Wonderful. It's always good to see that leaders acquire knowledge, but they also spread it. And I also like the fact that as much as you are a storyteller, you also read a lot. Then you get inspirations from all these other people you find inspiring, which is a nice lesson for the young people who could be listening in.
Absolutely. There's a way that I feel like it was a bit of a hassle to get marketing knowledge, to get marketing training, marketing education at the time that I was coming up as a potential marketer. So part of the thing that I want, like, feel very strongly about doing is the ability to make it easier for the next marketers, for the next marketing leaders. Those of myths, our profession, I feel like, is misunderstood. I feel like marketing has a marketing problem. If that makes sense.
Ministers of enjoyment.
So I feel like there's a perception issue that we really need to manage, because probably the next crop of marketing leaders need to be well supported, well grounded in principle, have a better understanding of what exactly the foundation is at the issue. So I feel like,
Wait a minute. Do you know what it will take for Uganda to achieve a middle class economy by 2040? Please send us an email at onuganda@gmail.com.
if I can do my small part in giving back the discipline that I feel like has given me a lot of fulfillment. I feel very, very fortunate for the opportunity to teach marketers and to share. Yeah.
That's brilliant. When I read that bit of you saying that you really love your job because you do create impact. Now, speaking to what you just said, that brands have the opportunity to create impact within, their communities. I really was touched by the campaign on autism, because you could have thought, well, mainstream spirits brand manager, what is the line with autism? But that was such. And then it also speaks to your empathy at the end of the day. So how did that come about? I remember the last time we spoke, you were in Mombasa, the African Marketers Convention.
Yes.
How did that come about? And I know that's where the idea was born.
So it was really interesting. We went to Mombasa for the African Marketers Conference. And interestingly, it was during lunchtime. So I sat with Joseph Chigozi.
Yeah.
And Joseph Chigozi was extremely passionate. He was talking about, I think during conversation, he got to find out that we both have children who have autism.
Okay.
And so it was so interesting. And part of what makes the struggle with autism difficult is the feeling that you are alone.
Yes.
And that goes for the people who are actually living with it.
Yeah.
It goes for the caretakers, the parents who are dealing with it. And so there's a certain form of unspoken relief you get when you feel somebody else going through it, and that you're not alone.
The numbers that came for the run.
So when we're talking about it and sharing, I think it's something that's getting more known now. The real problem with autism is not the autism itself, because that there's nothing anybody can do about it. If the child has got an autism, they'll have it for their whole life, and you're the parent of the child, that won't change, right? The only thing that makes it difficult to live with autism is the stigma around it. Is the fact that autistic people are in a world that's not meant for them, and all of us have to go through so much to learn how to live in a world that us neurotypicals live in, but not enough is being done to adjust the world to live in. So we had that nature of conversations, and after that the question is, like, what do we do? And we're two marketers talking about it. Our core job really as a marketer, the core job you have is to create the impact. And so what do we do?
Awareness.
So I think the one thing that we agreed on, and at that time it wasn't very clear on what exactly, but the one thing that we agreed on is we have to do something disruptive and something massive to create awareness at scale about autism, because it's really living with us. It's highly prevalent, and it's a reality some people have not yet faced that too. And so that's where the idea of the Autism Awareness Run came from.
So the first time I heard about autism was when my cousin was born, I think late 2000s. But he was born in the UK, so it didn't really matter, because here in Uganda I never heard of it. And then fast forward, maybe 2011, a friend started a foundation in Entebbe for autistic children. And I thought, great, I have a cousin, but these children are very smart. It's not your ordinary Tomdi.
Yeah. And usually it will be things like, once they find something that they're really good at or passionate about, you find that they're excelling a lot. And because of things like stigma, you find somebody who potentially would have been maybe a math genius, a music genius, is now being discriminated, is being bullied, their esteem is low, is being hidden by the parents.
Schools, special needs schools here.
Yes, there are special needs schools, There are centers for autistic people. I know Blossom Spectrum. I know Tunaweza. I think Donor Center. There's quite a few.
Okay. Yeah.
But as I've said, there are few. And it's like the prevalence of autism keeps increasing.
Yeah.
So the need keeps increasing.
Yeah.
So therapists are few, they're expensive. So we really need to get more, like more training, more education, more schools in more centers. Yeah.
No, I only have respect for those children, adults with autism. They can tell you when you were born, when you tell them your birthday, the day, the time, and you're like, wait, how do you do that? Okay, it's superhuman. So now back to Mombasa.
One more thing about autism, it presents differently in different people. So you know, we used to think that the spectrum is like a line of you're mild, then there's extreme. But then it's more like a circle. So you find some people, for example, some autistic people present with difficulties in social situations. And yet when it comes to, let's say, mathematics or comprehension, they are really, really good. And some people present with like extreme social consciousness, that it's so like the social butterflies. But then when it comes to maybe basic maths, it's so difficult for them.
Really?
Yes.
I thought all of them were.
No, so there's no autistic person who's the same. Like everybody's autism presents differently. There are some, of course, who find it a lot more difficult. So right now, the way that the classification is based on how much support you need to go about regular life. So there's people who require low support, there are people who require higher support, and then there are those who are profound, that they literally can't like probably exist without being supported. And this involves things like walking, like toilet, the use of toilet, like some are non-verbal, you know, things like that. So it's really like there's a range. And but then it's not all lost. With support, with therapy, with the right interventions, we could really get those geniuses out, and you hear the stories.
Shall we start then a podcast for autistic
A bit of us
I
of that.
can tell. I mean, you really share with a passion for impact, which we spoke about earlier. So now Mombasa, what else was top of mind apart from disruptive strategies?
So, and you know what? One of the things that I think I learned from Dre is really to be very agile and steadfast with execution. So by evening time, he had 3 potential sponsors,
Nice.
5 potential allies.
So
it kind of like started that way, and then it grew into the autism awareness run. And it very good turnout, very big support, and lots of awareness, the right conversations with the right stakeholders started off. And part of our discussion included like a 10-year plan that starts from awareness to institutional support to policy support to building centers or helping with centers. The ultimate goal is, how do we get autistic people with autism to be employable, to be independent, and things like that.
And so for the African Marketer Convention, what else did you guys talk about?
So we didn't only talk about what it was excellent, but for me the key takeouts, right? So we spoke about things that would seem regular, but the things that stood out the most are things that we marketers take for granted, and that are very foundational. So the role of understanding a consumer, the use of data, the use of insights, data-driven decisions, and things like that. The need for us to be cognizant of the role of marketing to the bottom line. The discussion about how come marketers don't make their way to the boardroom. And the fact that marketing is considered to be more of a cost center than an investment. Things like that were spoken about. We spoke about the dynamic nature of marketing, AI, artificial intelligence becoming a thing. And what I find interesting, and I keep telling people, that about 5-10 years ago, virtual reality was anticipated to actually develop ahead of artificial intelligence. But it just seemed to be sudden, and then artificial intelligence is right now almost an integral part of at least every marketer's life.
I just watched a reel on Instagram where someone had the AI as the other body, and the background music was My Best Friend. So you have AI at the dining table, AI in the bathroom, AI at school, AI on your commute to work. So it's everywhere. People are just using it for everything.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and the experiment was developing really fast. Last year, you could look at an AI-generated video photo, and you could be so sure. And at this point in time, you could hear a song and you're not sure if it's an AI voice or if it's the real person, you know. So it's images are getting closer to real. The videos are disturbingly almost accurate. So there's a lot, and that for me AI is just a small thing that shows how dynamic the entire field of marketing is. So marketing is dynamic like that. So there's a lot of conversation about technology and its role in marketing and effectiveness. There's lots of conversation about basically the future of marketing. But there's one thing that both stood out and bothered me at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay.
So we had the marketing societies from different parts of the world present. Marketing side of New Zealand, Europe, of everywhere else. And everybody seemed to have a plan for Africa. Except
you guys.
The African marketers
Yeah.
society where the different countries were in. So it could be that every particular brand perhaps has their own strategy on how to approach that, but
the
fact
markets
that
in Africa?
it's there's a possibility that the Ugandan Marketer Society has an Africa-Uganda plan. There's a possibility that perhaps we don't need it, there's all that, but for me I found that both interesting and concerning at the same time. Like, how come everybody else has a plan for us? What's our plan for ourselves?
What is the opportunity there?
I think the opportunity is immense. Africa is the only continent whose economy is growing in double digits, and it's as close to double digits now that there's a slowdown. Africa is the only economy where population growth, there's steady population growth with a youngest demographic, secondly to the youngest demographic, so people who are really young. And on top of that, Africa naturally has the biggest mineral wealth and the natural resources. So it's very clear that most of the opportunities are within Africa. Now, the fact that the way these resources have been utilized is changing. There's a shift in mindsets, there's a shift in opportunity. There's growth in Afroculturalism. So people now take a lot more pride in their Africanness. There's a global movement, Africa to the world. So you find Afrobeat is going to be played in clubs in the US. You find the parts of the UK where Ugandan music is being played. And so basically... And
Ugandan brands, for example, being consumed.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, this is made in Uganda.
And so there's even a shift from, there used to be a thing of, this is made in Uganda. And this is made in Uganda. So there's that shift that I think that we need to be leading. There's a great wealth of opportunity in terms of what potential there is, be it from a macro level of just basic economic growth to the demographic dividend. There's so many opportunities that we have, and they're only getting bigger and bigger. So what does that mean for our specific brands? I think that's a question that the specific brands should be able to answer. But my question is, collectively, there should be an overarching strategy. An overarching strategy could be something like Bobo, by Uganda Build Uganda. That's an example of an overarching strategy. Is we don't all have to approach it the same way, but I think that there needs to be something that we look at as an opportunity.
That's brilliant. And also thought-provoking. So for that one patriot who has a business, but they're looking to get into Rwanda, Nigeria, why not? What's stopping you? So I think the saying is still going around. Everybody has a plan for Africa, but Africans. So let's not be among those people. Let's think bigger or farther than Uganda. And since Hillary here is a maths guy, he's a numbers guy, but also now a storyteller, you have to tell us, where do you see or foresee the future of marketing? What does the future of marketing look like for you?
To be honest, I'm more of a stories guy than a numbers guy.
Okay.
No, but yeah, I'm actually a bit fortunate that I have an accounting background, so I think that has really helped me a lot as a marketer. The ability
It's
to
needed.
I think it has helped me a lot, to be honest, because there's the ability to understand marketing as an investment. What's the return that it brings to the business? But the future of marketing for me and my predictions, So my predictions are one, that there's a big authenticity is becoming a lot stronger as a currency. So as a result of that, there's going to be higher demand for things like influencer marketing, and the way it's being done is going to be different. So you've seen a shift from how influencer marketing used to be. It used to be a make-believe image that perhaps a brand wants to curate, these polished models, posing with product and things like that. But that's changing, and now consumers are more attracted to brands that they feel are authentic, or they're more influenced by people that they feel are authentic. And I think at the back of our minds, maybe we need to always remember that influencer marketing is about influence at the end of the day. So it's this individual who has an impact on their audience, and what do they find in the depth of their connection, and how do they resonate with it? How does your brand fit in? Things like that. So you're finding AI images, AI, for example, images having thousands and millions of followers on TikTok. You're finding mascots like Duolingo, for example, having their own following because of the influence and the authenticity. And that's why things like storytelling are going to become a lot more important. So every brand needs to have a story that comes to life in a way that means something to the consumer. I think that's becoming more and more important. I think that technology and AI, not even just AI, but technology in general, is becoming a lot more important and influential in marketing. There are solutions that AI has already brought that 2-3 years ago were a big problem for organizations. And so I think that the core marketing roles are going to evolve. I don't believe that AI is going to take people's jobs, but I honestly believe that marketers that don't use AI are going to be replaced those who use it well. The key thing is, what is the role of technology in making those connections, emotional connections with your consumers? I think that's also becoming extremely important. I think that sustainability in marketing is powerful, important. It's needed, required now more than ever, but I predict that the importance is going to be a lot more. It's said widely that we are the first generation that's actually feeling the impact or the first effect of climate change. But it's also believed at the same time that we are probably the last generation that's able to do something about it. And I think the reality of this is going to come through in either subtle ways or more unsubtle ways. But it's time I'm sure that the time is actually now for marketers to consider sustainability in terms of practices, in terms of how we communicate, the tools, the mediums. I believe in the fact, right now, consumers are more drawn to brands and companies that they feel are more sustainable.
For the Gen Zs, they care very much about what the brand's purpose is, how they contribute to the environments they operate.
And I think that's going to grow more and more in the near future. In terms of the way media is being consumed, I feel like social is still very powerful because of how much of a medium it is in terms of storytelling. Communicating between consumers, of course, is going to be more important than brand communication. I think it already is. But the way that message is going to spread and what's going to enable those connections with consumers is the way that this media is being consumed. I've had some marketers predict that traditional media is dying, but I don't think so.
Not in a country where radio is still king.
Radio is still king in Uganda. I think that's going to be the case for a while. But I also believe that marketers are going to be more creative and more expressive in terms of how we use out of home, how we use TV, how we use the traditional methods. And we're seeing this, for example, now when we have an audio-visual podcast, and we're 2-3 screens at the same time. We're probably watching a movie while on your phone, and perhaps maybe your laptop is open, 2-3 screens. And that's a reality that consumers are going because of the competing messages that are bombarded with them. So the need for disruption is going to be more and more because we need to continue to stand out.
Yeah, and we definitely want to see a lot more community, but also just influencers who credit you for believing in them, believing, taking a chance on them, which is brilliant to see, because if we have a lot of creators or creatives, like you said, then people then need to think out of the box and believe in the vision, even though it's can't be tangible, It's intangible. Okay, then the very last question we ask: what do you think it's going to take for Uganda to achieve a middle class economy?
What is going to take for Ugandans to achieve?
Because UBL is one of the biggest contributor to our economy. I believe brands, if they do their part, right, have impact in the communities they operate, then they also pay their taxes. We then have better infrastructure. But what do you think it's going to take? Okay. If you had the chance to make a change, what would it be, and in your opinion, then how do we get there?
Okay, cool. I think that's a very powerful question. If I could snap my fingers like this and do a few changes to get us into a middle class economy, there would be really, really few. So first, automatically we need to reduce the leakages. And where does our money go a lot in terms of leakages? You really know, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's those small little leakages in terms of money being lost in corruption, money being lost in things that don't give accountability. Basically, leakages where foreign repatriation. So basically, if we plug the leakages, it will definitely help. So first and foremost. Secondly, I think Ugandans need to properly embrace Ugandan products. I think that we need to start there. We have a wealth of creative people, passionate producers that are actually doing a good job and improving on their quality. However, the competition that is from elsewhere could perhaps create incentives. I'm not against competition because it's required it's a proper business practice that gives a benefit to the consumer. But I think that as Ugandans, or as Africans, we need to be happy to patronize our own brands, from consuming and supporting a Ugandan product. I feel like we still have that what is a mental lock for me of considering foreign to be superior. And yet we have powerful brands. We have the likes of Uganda Breweries. We have creators that I know that are making some of the best in terms of fashion and fabrics. We have electric, we have the Kira EV, we have things like that. So I just imagine, let's say, every government official, MP, the guys who are given cars off our taxes are given cars that are assembled or made in or affiliated to Uganda. As just a simple example. So
it's a mindset issue, isn't it?
So yes, I think that we really need to be intentional about giving support to local based products, and what that will do for us is improve perhaps our balance of payments. Ideally, if we are importing less, we shall be empowered to produce more and then definitely export. I think for me the easiest shortcut to Uganda being a middle class economy is us taking full advantage of our resources. I feel like we're insanely gifted as a country. Even the simple things we take for granted here in Uganda, if you travel a lot, you won't see them, you won't eat the food that is in Uganda. Small simple things, the pineapples, the fruits, the what.
It's a resource.
Our weather, our flora, fauna, the landscape itself. Like, this country is insanely beautiful. This country has a lot of potential. even the people themselves, like you'll be to countries and you won't believe how friendly and open Ugandans are.
Yeah.
And it's something that we take for granted in a wild way. So if we could be able to cash in on our advantages, I think that would be the quickest shortcut.
Yeah.
So how do we promote our country better, perhaps with more intentionality? How do we make the best of our arable land and fertile soils? I believe ideally, because we say snap the finger, Uganda has the potential to be the food basket of the whole world. Yeah, but I feel like it's potential that we are sleeping on. So I believe that the different brands, as you've talked about, and we have a number of organizations doing their part of trying to play their role in terms of creating economic development across the line in different industries. Yeah, but I believe that the work has to be all the way around. I believe that the informal sector needs to be structured. Informal sector contributes a lot to this country. There's a lot of cash moving around within the informal sector. So if it could be well structured and well organized, there would be less exploitation of artisans, for example. You'd find you have the ability to pay them more. So I believe that those, a few of the things that would get us into a middle income economy.
Now, if we gave you the magic stick right now, and you had to change one thing, which one would you start with?
Whoa,
And how would you
mindset.
do it?
That's easy.
Yeah.
I think mindset.
Okay.
I think it would unlock everything else. Yeah.
That's true, because your highest point, which is corruption, can also be resolved, sort of reduced by
each and everything.
mindset.
The corruption will be reduced by mindset. If it's the support that we give for fellow Ugandan products, that will change via mindset. The belief, for example, the creative industry having themselves would be, there's so much that I think it will be a very good start, and everything else will just come.
Yeah. Wait, one more last question. So I know you've worked on some leading campaigns, but you have to tell me one interesting campaign you've worked on that really has impressed you, or a campaign you've watched on the screens and you think, wow, that's so cool.
Okay, that is a very interesting question. I think the best campaign I have worked on, or I'm working on, is yet to come.
Really? Okay.
There's something around the corner.
Oh, we're waiting.
But, one of I think I would say it's a difficult question for me because I'm running quite a number of brands.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult.
How many brands are under your portfolio, just for context?
3, so there's 17 V&A and Uganda Breweries.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's complex. It's like asking which Arabian is your favorite.
Which
But I have had the opportunity to work on very many powerful campaigns. I've been a part of some very impactful work, and I don't take it for granted. I think that this position has really blessed me in a way that not many people get a chance to be blessed. And I can't really put a finger on which is the most powerful or impactful, but the one that comes to my mind very quickly for some reason, there are 2. So there's one where we had to do a refresh of Bond 7 and V&A.
Yes.
So Bond 7, we call it the golden spirit, most loved whiskey in Uganda, proportionately high compared to other whiskeys. So out of it's been loved in Uganda for a very, very long time. Bondo has been a part of our tradition. If you ask 10 people in a certain age range, they'll tell you on campus we used to enjoy Bondo, or I know it from my uncle, things like that. And one of the things that gave it so much power is accessibility, price point. Is Uganda's favorite sherry by far. I believe everybody has their V&A story. In fact, you should tell us your V&A story.
Actually, I'm not that much of a drinker, so no. I think when I used to drink, I tried Uganda Breweries.
Yeah.
And then the time coconut came out, I wasn't drinking anymore. But my sister would swear by it. Uganda Breweries. If you're traveling to Germany, you have to take Uganda Breweries as part of the pack.
And that's why I call it the unofficial emblem of the country.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uganda to the world, for real.
One time someone told me there was a parade in London, and then they saw this guy with a Uganda Breweries, and it was the only sign you could tell this is Ugandan. Of all the people that were there, I think it was one of those Black Lives Matter movements.
Yeah.
But this guy came with a Uganda.
Nice. That's powerful.
That's the only way
the
to
spirit that
tell.
binds us
Yes.
in and out of the country. Yeah.
Mantra, spirit that but wherever you go, I love it.
So the thing about V&A is everybody has a V&A story. So it was loved for a longest time as well. But these two brands sort of like were not matching the sophistication of our consumers. The consumers were advancing, getting sophisticated. They were changing, and so as a result, we could tell from the data. And so it was very obvious what we needed to do.
But now from the data from the outlets.
We have a whole pool of big data, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why our brands are honestly doing very well. Is we have the advantage to make data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
And data-driven marketing, for me, I think is like a basic need. You know the basic needs? Air, water, what?
Maslow's needs.
I feel like data is a basic need
Today,
of
yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
And so we have the advantage to have that on our side. And so because we could tell from the data, so it was time to do a total refresh on the brands. And so we had a total refresh purpose, a pack change for Bond 7 and for V&A. And this created an effect that caused the brands to get back into growth. Think about how your stockist, your spirits shop at the corner, Yokaduka and Kafunda, are now benefiting from a renewed proposition in terms of what V&A is. Think about the bonds that are being created now, because these people are now, coming together over a Bond 7, after a day of work, or to play PS on a weekend. Think about the connections that are now being made, the celebrations that are now being, things that are now being done as an impact of the refresh and revitalization of those brands. You see how the impact that Bond 7, for example, is having on the hip hop community. So you see that there's real impact in terms of if brands are healthy. So there's really quite a lot of work that I've been a part of that's really impactful. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we've covered most of it. Do you think there's something else we have left out today?
Yeah, but I think one of the most powerful for me could be, I think maybe there's quite a bit of work that I've done with the Soroti Cricket Academy. Soroti Cricket Academy is really powerful. I've not seen many organizations that have had the level of impact that it has had in a period of just over 10 years. It was started in 2014, so just a few girls playing cricket, but the need for talent development got us into schools. And then what you could see within the first few months is that the young girls are now liking school more. Previously the norm, and you'd see it around the community, there's early school dropout, early pregnancy and things like that. But now you have an opportunity where kids are staying in school more because they know that in the evening they're going to play a bit of cricket. And so because it became more than just the game, it now became the need for all-round social support became very apparent. So we needed to make sure that the cricketers are educated, that they are aware of things like gender-based violence, proper health practices, counseling, guidance, even simple things that we take for granted, like how do you boost their self-confidence. And so it started to create impact. As a result, about 80% or so of the national team, but 70% or so of the national team contribution is from Soroti. So there's proper talent development. It puts Soroti on the international map in terms of cricket. So there are people who actually know Uganda because of Soroti Cricket. Cricket Week used to be in Kampala and in Jinja, but Soroti hosted Cricket Week. There are 3 big clubs now on the top tier. And for me, what that makes me think about is, imagine this girl you're growing up with in the village, and she comes back during holidays, and she's at the back page of a national newspaper as the superstar who has hit. It makes the other girls in the neighborhood feel like, you know what, even me, my life could be destined for so much better. And I feel like that is the level of impact that the Soroti Cricket Academy has had. And there's lots of other things, like during lockdown, there's about over 60 families almost that the academy fed
Yeah.
through Feed a Million Mouths, you find that like the gender-based violence communication, for example, the support that they're being given in terms of education, bursaries, and things like that, have created a whole different community, and it just keeps spreading. So what began with 4 kids is now close to about 1,200 people in the ecosystem, about 13 schools, and it just keeps on growing. The impact keeps on getting more.
What it is, we should change your middle name to Impact. So Hillary Impact, thank you so much for making time today. It's quite late on a Tuesday. He drove all the way from Luzira just to make it in time before 6 p.m. So thank you so much for making time. And also continuing to show other leaders that you can mentor, you can share the knowledge you have gotten with other people coming up the ladder. So anybody who loves this impact story, where do they follow up?
Well, Hillary Baguma on LinkedIn, Bigger Hillary on Instagram and Twitter. Also, it's X now.
Datamine.
Datamine Technical Institute. We'll be teaching professionals and adding value to their pursuit of development, business development.
Wonderful. What a great way to end this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening in this far. I really hope that this conversation was helpful to you. Share this episode with your colleagues or friends that you think will benefit from this information. Let them know what you're listening to. Would you also rate our podcast? Because once you rate our podcast, other people like you are able to listen to this information and use it to their own benefit. On a lighter note, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. We really would love to hear your